Can you break out as a welder without being a welder's helper first? Are the rules different for the union versus non-union? Is being a helper a requirement for being a pipeline welder? Stay tuned till the end of this video if you want to be a helper or a welder. I'm going to share with you how you can get answers to the most asked questions for either. Before we get started, make sure and subscribe and ring the bell to get notified when I post a new video every Friday. Okay, so a little background on me. I have actually never helped a welder. Had the opportunity a couple of times to help my brother or help another buddy of mine, but I was working at a shop right out of high school. I was working 40 hours a week. It was a steady gig. I mean, it didn't pay very much at all, but it was a steady job right out of high school. And I was welding and I was fabricating, and it was in a shop, and I was just enjoying it. I was right out of Votech, you know. I was raring to go. I was just glad to be working with my hands and welding and doing something besides concrete work, because that's what I did growing up. But anyway, so being that I had this steady job, I never would just up and quit, because the way pipeline works is, or oil field work in general, is if you get the opportunity to go work somewhere, you usually have to be there within a couple of days, usually, especially if you don't know anybody and they're just needing help. So that was the way it was with my brother. He said, I can get you on as my helper on this job, but you got to be here tomorrow or in 2 days. And I just wasn't going to do that to those people that I was working for right out of high school. I now have been a pipeline welder for 7 or 8 years now. I've had a lot of helpers, and I've met a lot of welders that have both helped before they welded and also just went into it welding, like got on the pipeline, started as a welder, and never did help, just like myself. So you can definitely go about it either way. So that pretty much answers your question. No, you do not have to be a helper, but do I regret not being a helper as far as pipeline work goes? Absolutely. I absolutely regret it, because whenever you start out as a helper, you can get on more jobs than welders. You can have a job longer. You can help lots of welders. You can really start to meet people, to start building your network. You can start making a name as a helper. That way, after you've helped for whether it be 2 years or 5 years, the longer you help, the more contacts you build. Whenever you start welding, you're going to be able to stay more busy. I know a guy right now that's fixing to take his welding test to become a welder, and he's been helping for, I don't know how long he's been helping. I'm guessing 4 or 5 years or longer. I don't know. But he's been helping a long time, and he's already got a job lined up right after he takes his test at the hall. He's ready to go to work, and that's the type of thing that I didn't have. I've always had to struggle to get my jobs. You know, I've always had to cold call people and bank on those welding bosses that I've worked for to give me phone calls, you know, in the future if they have work. It's a lot harder because I don't know as many people, as to where if I would have helped first, I could have met so many more people and just learned a lot before I got into it. You know, being a welder, all you ever do is weld. It's hard to put yourself in your helper's shoes also, you know, because you don't know what it's like being there. I mean, I've helped myself, you know, like, so I try to treat them with respect, but it's nice to help first, because you really get to learn the ropes before you take off as a welder. As a helper, you get to watch welders weld. You get to learn different techniques and try out ones that work for yourself. Yeah, you learn what not to do. You learn all kinds of tricks and just being around good welders as much as you can before you ever break out welding is just invaluable. So I definitely, as you can tell, I advise helping first if that's what you're wanting to do as pipeline. I definitely would advise taking a helper job first. So if you do help before you start welding, how long do you have to help? And what's the difference between a union job and a non-union job? If you start helping on a non-union job, it more or less depends on your work ethic and how bad you want it, what you already know, your experience beforehand. Just how bad you want it, kind of, is what I always say. I know helpers that helped for 6 months, a year, and broke out as a welder. I also know helpers that have helped for 5, 6 years, and then they broke out as a welder. On the union side, it's kind of the same, but their rule of thumb is if you hire in as a helper, they require you to work about 5,000 hours before you can go to take your test as a welder. Like I said, it just depends on your experience, how long you've been doing it. Another question I get is, if I've welded non-union, do I have to be a helper in the union first before I become a union welder? The answer is no, you do not have to be a helper before you become a welder if you get in whenever the timing's right. That's actually whenever I got in, is they were needing welders, and I took that opportunity to join the union because they were needing welders at the time. If they're not needing welders like real bad, but you can get a slot as a helper, That's one way I know of some guys getting in the union if your sole desire is to join the union, you know. I had a helper that actually done that. He welded a couple of years non-union, but then he joined the union as a helper just to get his foot in the door, because then he's already got welding experience. Once he meets enough welding bosses or works for a welding boss that needs a welder, that welding boss might, if he's got the right attitude and everything, you know, and the good work ethic, and he's a good welder, you know, he can go transfer his card over to be a welder. That's a case where he may not have to help for 5,000 hours before he gets a test. So there's either one. If you're already a welder, you can go and be a helper to join the union as a welder, or you can wait for the right timing and get in whenever they need welders. Real quick, a pop quiz. What does breakout mean? Or breaking out? Or he broke me out? Drop your answer in the comment section. So a couple of the reasons that you should help first is, like I already mentioned, to start building your network. That's probably the number one thing that I realized the biggest benefit of helping on the union or non-union side first is to start building your network, start meeting people. And then the second one is you can start making good money as a helper to start building your rig truck. You can get on more jobs to make that good steady money without being without a job. You know, a lot of helpers stay way busier than welders, so therefore they have that more steady paycheck, you know, as to where a welder might only stay busy 6, 8, 9 months out of the year. A helper might work year round just because a helper slot is easier to keep, you know, like whenever they go to laying welders and helpers off, sometimes other helpers, you know, get laid off first, but they want to keep you. Or like if you're welder, if I'm helping a welder and he gets laid off, that welding boss might want to keep me to go help somebody else, you know what I mean? Whenever it comes layoff time, you might have the opportunity to stay longer as a helper versus being a welder. Another thing is just paying your dues as a helper, you know, and what I mean by paying your dues is like learning a lot before you go into being a welder, you know. It's like a lot of employers always say, I'm not going to ask my employee to do something that I haven't done. It's kind of the same thing as a helper, you know, like if I'm going to be a welder and I'm going to be telling this helper what to do, it's like I want to know what it's like to be in that situation, so I have more respect for them, you know what I mean? So it's like if you pay your dues, you start from the bottom and work your way up type of thing. It's not the only way, but paying your dues, get your feet wet, and just get an idea of what it's like out there before you break out as a welder. So which is right for you? If you are brand new to the industry, are you going to help first or go straight to being a welder? If you are a welder already but not on the pipeline, are you willing to be a helper first to get your foot in the door of the pipeline industry? The answer should be yes, especially if you're young. No matter which is right for you, I've got more answers for you. In the top link of the description, I've linked my guide for wannabe welders and welder helpers. Drop me your name and email, and I'll send you a series of emails that answers all your questions about how to get started, how to do certain tasks, and so on and so on. Let's make you a gonna be instead of a wannabe. Like this video if you liked it. Don't forget to answer the question of the day. What does break out, or he broke me out, or I broke out, what does that mean? Subscribe and ring the bell to get notified when I post a new video every Friday. My advice for the week is be willing to take a step back to take a step forward. Lots of people are too proud to take less money or hire in at a lower rank, but if you're determined, go ahead and bet on yourself and know that you're not going to be there for long. Use it as a stepping stone, not as a speed bump. Thank you all for watching. Remember, learn something every day. We will see you next Friday.